Hi guys, so this video is going to be about red-tailed boas. This is my girl Suma. She'll come around to show herself. She's about 8 feet long and around like 30 pounds and really strong. Anyway, okay, basic care of a red-tailed boa. They obviously can get very large, like this girl. I don't recommend them to everyone because they're not easy to hold with how large they get, and they need very large enclosures. For a male, they get about 4 to 6 feet long, generally 6, sometimes larger with the BCC species. She's a BCI. BCI are the most common ones around. They're just known as the regular red-tailed boas. They're not the true red-tailed boa like the BCC. They generally have the darker tails, and BCC can get a bit longer, but any morphs that you see are going to be BCI. So yeah, the males get about 6 feet long and would need at least a 4x2 foot cage. You want one that is like made of melamine or wood coated in dry lock, or something else that is a water sealant, or there's vision cages. There's all different things that you can get, but the taller the better also, because they do love to climb. They're not technically arboreal or anything like that, but they really enjoy to have a little bit of height. So if you want to make it like 2 or 3 or 4 feet tall, they would definitely enjoy that. As for the cage setup, you want to have some branches to climb on if you have the room to them. If you're just going with a short cage, then I would probably leave those out, unless you have like a small baby in there or something. But obviously for a huge snake like this, she has like one small lug in there to climb on. As for the females, they obviously get larger, and you will have like a 6 to 8 foot, sometimes more, boa. So they at least need a 6x2 foot enclosure. You don't really want to go with tanks because they don't hold humidity well, but if you do use a tank, you want to cover the top with plywood so it's pretty much sealing in the humidity, and just have a hygrometer in there to make sure that it's where it should be. About 60 to 65% humidity is what you want. If it's too low, they'll have respiratory infections and they'll need antibiotics. It's just not healthy. Or they can have shedding problems, get stuck shed, and it's really not healthy for them. For bedding, if some people use rack systems, which I would never do for a red tail just because they're pretty active. They like to climb and stuff like that. I just personally wouldn't do it, but some people who have the closed-in ones will use aspen, and they just spray it often and make sure the humidity stays up. But what I highly recommend is cypress mulch or peat moss, or a mix of the both. I have always used cypress, and I recently mixed it with the peat moss because it has some like softer texture, and they really seem to like it. You just want something that holds humidity well, mostly. So obviously nothing that is like sand or something really dry. Some people use newspaper, but I wouldn't recommend that because the ink can stain their body if it gets wet. So for a baby or something, just use paper towel if you don't feel like using a loose substrate. As for the heating, they need belly heat, and I use heat mats on all of mine. And you want the temperature to be about 90 to 93 degrees on their stomach so that they can regulate their body temperature and metabolism. If it's not warm enough, they won't be able to digest their food, and they can either throw it up, because if it stays in their stomach it'll rot, or they'll choose not to eat, and then you'll have a malnourished snake. As for feeding, you want to feed once every 7 days, and usually when they're in shed, they're not going to eat, so I don't offer mine food. They mostly will want to be left alone. You can raise humidity a little bit for them. But you can feed them right after they're done. You want to feed them one like properly sized prey item, and you want these guys on rats because they can't live on mice their whole life. It's not going to have as much nutrition and calcium, and it's obviously not going to be big enough for big snakes like this. You just want to make sure it's not bigger than the width of the body, because anything too big they will probably just throw up, and it's just going to be really bad for them. You don't want anything too small either, because if you're just feeding them mice and stuff like that, like I said, it won't be healthy. Let's see, you want a water dish that they can soak their whole body in, so you don't want something small for her. She has like a huge cat litter thing that's like 2 feet long. I also recommend feeding frozen thawed because I've seen way too many incidents where rats have seriously injured or killed reptiles. They can bite and scratch, and it's not natural like people say it is, because it's not natural putting them in a cage and they can't run away. So instead of just running away like they were in the wild, they're going to be attacking your animal and could possibly kill it. So you just don't want to have that. Plus it's more humane. I would just feed either pre-killed, if you know how to do it, or frozen thawed, which you can just buy online or expos or anything like that. That way they're just killed in a CO2 chamber where they just fall asleep, and then they get frozen, and you just thaw them out in warm water until they're completely thawed through and then like warm, and then you feed that to them. After they eat, you want to just leave them be for about 2 or 3 days so they can digest their food. Otherwise it could like rip open their insides and just be unhealthy for them. They could also just throw it up and won't have their meal, and it's obviously not healthy for them to regurgitate anything. I wouldn't use lights for their heating because they need the belly heat. They're nocturnal, so the light doesn't really help them, and they don't bask since they just go out at night and they sit on warm rocks and things like that. You always want heat mats on a thermostat too, because they can overheat easily. So you want something that will control it, and to measure it, you want a digital temperature probe, which will go right on the heat mat and tell you the exact surface temperature. You don't want one of the analog gauges or anything like that, because that'll just tell you ambient temperature and not even be as accurate at telling you ambient temperature. But yeah, I think if you have experience with snakes already, something like horn snakes, mill snakes, bull snakes, king snakes, something that's more of a medium, small size, then I think if you are looking to get a red-tailed boa, I would start it with a male, since they're still large. Mine is 6 feet long. They're just not as girthy, and they're still very strong. But once you have experience with them, I would say you can go for a female perhaps, or just get work with them. But I wouldn't recommend them for beginners just because of their size and large housing requirements, and just they're so strong that, like, my girl is not always just sitting on me like this. Half the time she's trying to go explore, and if they get behind something, they can just latch on, and you would not believe how strong they are. So yeah, I mean, if you guys have any questions, feel free to message me or comment on this video, anything like that, and I'll answer any questions that you have. I hope that if you have a red-tailed boa that this helped you, or if you're getting one that it helped you. Other than that, I think the only thing I didn't mention is just I wouldn't house them together at all. They can fight and have problems, and if you have a male and female, she can breed too early, which could kill her, things like that. But that's the basics really. So thanks for watching, guys.